In a small village nestled in the mountains of Oaxaca, Mexico, lived a young boy named Daigo. He was 12 years old, with wide brown eyes and a shock of unruly black hair.
Daigo lived with his grandmother, Abula Rosa, in a modest adobe house.
The village was tight-knit, and everyone knew each other by name. Most of the villagers worked the land, growing corn and beans, or made traditional crafts to sell at the local market. Daigo was different from the other boys in the village.
While they spent their days helping their families in the fields or playing soccer in the dusty streets, Daigo had a passion for music. He had an old guitar that had been passed down to him from his father, who had passed away when Daigo was very young.
The guitar was battered and worn, but to Daigo, it was his most treasured possession. Every evening, after his chores were done, Daigo would sit on the porch and play his guitar. The music flowed from his fingers effortlessly, filling the air with melodies that were both joyful and haunting. The villagers would pause to listen as they went about their evening routines, but none of them took much notice of the boy with the guitar. To them, Daigo was just a child with a hobby, nothing more. Daigo dreamed of becoming a musician, of playing on stages far beyond the mountains of Oaxaca, but he knew that such dreams were far out of reach for someone like him. The village was small, and opportunities were scarce.
The only musicians who ever made it out were those with connections or money, and Daigo had neither. Still, he continued to practice, pouring his heart into every note.
He learned to play by ear, picking up the songs of the birds, the wind in the trees, and the rhythms of daily life. Music was his escape, his way of expressing the emotions he couldn't put into words. Every year, the village celebrated the Festival of Life, a vibrant event filled with food, dancing, and music. It was a time for the community to come together and honor their ancestors while celebrating the present. The highlight of the festival was the talent competition, where villagers of all ages would showcase their skills, whether it was dancing, singing, or playing an instrument.
Daigo had always been too shy to participate, content to watch from the sidelines as others took the stage. But this year, something was different. Abula Rosa had noticed the spark in his eyes whenever he played his guitar, and she encouraged him to enter the competition.
Daigo mi enayo, she said, resting a hand on his shoulder.
You have a gift that deserves to be shared with the world.
Don't be afraid to let your music be heard.
Daigo hesitated, fear gnawing at him.
What if they laughed at him? What if he wasn't good enough?
But deep down, he knew that his grandmother was right.
This was his chance to show everyone what he could do, to prove that he was more than just a boy with a dream.
The day of the festival arrived, and the village square was alive with color and sound. Stalls lined the streets, selling tamales, mo, and other traditional dishes. Children ran through the crowd, laughing and playing, while the adults mingled and caught up on the latest gossip. As the sun began to set, the talent competition started.
One by one, the performers took the stage, each greeted with applause and cheers.
Daigo stood at the edge of the square, clutching his guitar, his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, it was his turn. Daigo took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage.
The crowd quieted as he adjusted the strap of his guitar and positioned his fingers on the strings. For a moment, he hesitated, overwhelmed by the number of eyes watching him.
But then he remembered his grandmother's words, and the fear began to melt away. Daigo closed his eyes and started to play.
The music flowed from him like a river, carrying with it all the emotions he had kept bottled up inside.
The notes were pure and clear, each one resonating with the soul of the listener.
The crowd was silent, captivated by the sound of the young boy's guitar.
As the final notes faded into the night, there was a moment of stillness, and then the applause erupted.
It was louder than anything Daigo had ever heard, and for the first time, he saw the villagers not as distant figures, but as people who had been touched by his music. Chapter 3. A new opportunity festival ended, but the memory of Daigo's performance lingered in the minds of the villagers. Word of his talent spread beyond the village, reaching the ears of a traveling musician named Miguel, who had once lived in Oaxaca but had since moved to Mexico City. Miguel was a well-known guitarist, and he had returned to Oaxaca to visit his family during the festival. When he heard about Daigo, Miguel was intrigued. He decided to seek out the young boy and see if the rumors were true. He found Daigo at home, sitting on the porch with his guitar. "Daigo, is it?" Miguel asked, his voice warm and friendly. "I heard about your performance at the festival. I'd like to hear you play." Daigo was surprised but also excited. He had never met a real musician before. and the idea of playing for someone who understood music filled him with both anticipation and anxiety. He nodded and began to play, choosing one of the songs he had composed himself.
As he played, he felt a connection with Miguel, as if they were speaking a language only they could understand. When Daigo finished, Miguel was silent for a moment, clearly impressed. "You have a natural talent, Daigo," he said finally.
"Your music is powerful, and you play with such emotion. Have you ever thought about studying music more seriously?"
Daigo's eyes widened.
"I've always wanted to, but I don't have the means to go to school or anything like that."
Miguel smiled. "There's more than one way to learn."
"If you're interested, I'd like to take you under my wing. I can teach you, help you develop your skills, and maybe even bring you to Mexico City someday. There are opportunities there that you wouldn't find here in the village."
It was an offer Daigo had never dreamed of.
The idea of leaving his village, of traveling to a place as big as Mexico City, was both thrilling and terrifying. But more than anything, it was the chance to follow his passion, to make his dream of becoming a musician a reality.
Daigo looked at his grandmother, who had been listening quietly from the doorway. She gave him a reassuring nod, her eyes filled with pride and encouragement. "I'd like that very much," Daigo said, his voice steady with newfound determination.
Daigo began training with Miguel, learning not only the technical aspects of music, but also the discipline and dedication required to succeed. Every day, they would practice for hours, sometimes in the village, other times in the nearby fields where they could be alone with the music.
Miguel taught Daigo how to read sheet music, how to compose songs, and how to understand the theory behind the notes. But more than that, he taught him about the power of music to connect with people, to tell stories and convey emotions.
As the months passed, Daigo's skills grew.
His fingers moved effortlessly across the strings, and his understanding of music deepened.
But it wasn't just about playing the guitar anymore.
Daigo began to experiment with different instruments, learning to play the violin, the piano, and even the traditional marimba of Oaxaca. Miguel was impressed with how quickly Daigo learned, but he also knew that the boy's true strength lay in his creativity and passion. Daigo had a gift for composition, for creating melodies that were both unique and deeply moving. One day, Miguel sat Daigo down and told him it was time for the next step. "Daigo, you've come so far in such a short time.
I think you're ready to take your music to the next level.
There's a music academy in Mexico City that I believe you could thrive in.
It won't be easy, and you will be far from home, but it could open doors for you that you never thought possible."
Daigo's heart raced at the thought.
The idea of leaving his village, his grandmother, and everything he knew was daunting. But the chance to study at a music academy, to learn from the best and become a true musician, was too great an opportunity to pass up. "I'll do it," Daigo said, determination in his voice.
"I want to learn as much as I can and share my music with the world." With Miguel's help, Daigo prepared to leave for Mexico City.
The entire village came together to support him, offering words of encouragement and small gifts for his journey.
Abuela Rosa, though sad to see him go, was proud of her grandson. She knew that this was his path, and she wanted nothing more than for him to succeed. Before he left, Daigo composed a special song for his grandmother, a piece that captured all the love and gratitude he felt for her. He played it for her one last time on their porch, the notes floating into the warm evening air like a promise.
When the day came, Daigo boarded the bus to Mexico City, his guitar slung over his shoulder and his heart full of hope.
The city was overwhelming at first, with its towering buildings, bustling streets, and constant noise.
But Daigo quickly adapted, finding solace in the music that had always been his guide. At the academy, Daigo faced new challenges.
The other students were talented and competitive, and the expectations were high. But Daigo didn't let that deter him. He worked harder than ever, drawing on the lessons he had learned from Miguel and the strength he had gained from his journey.
As the years passed, Daigo's talent flourished. He began performing at concerts, composing his own music, and even teaching younger students. His name started to become known in the music world, not just in Mexico, but beyond.
But no matter how far he went, Daigo never forgot where he came from.
He returned to Oaxaca whenever he could, visiting his grandmother and playing for the villagers who had once overlooked him. In the end, Daigo's story was one of resilience, passion, and the power of dreams. He had started as a young boy with nothing but a battered guitar and a heart full of music, and he had become a musician whose melodies touched the hearts of many. And as he stood on the stage of a grand concert hall in Mexico City, the applause of the audience ringing in his ears,
Daigo knew that he had found his place in the world, a place where his music could soar, just like the dreams he had once dared to believe in.